There's this hotel at the Bulgarian Seaside in which we have an apartment. To be honest, that's a strong word for it because it's just a big room with a giant bed, refrigerator, big windows on both of the walls, and a small bathroom. It's on the ground floor, and again, both of the walls are facing the parking lot of the hotel. Despite all that, it's perfect for me alone. It's right next to the beach, and that's why I've been spending some of my summer vacations there. So July 3 years ago, I'm spending a week with my ex-boyfriend there, and 3 to 4 weeks alone after that. My ex always said that the owners of the hotel are a bunch of creeps. Whenever we went out of the room, we had to walk a path passing through the reception, where they used to sit all day doing nothing. The old dad, his son Crumb, and his daughter and her husband. When you pass, they all get silent and stare at you every freaking time. I was used to it already, but the boyfriend was irritated, especially when he caught Crumb staring at my ass, smiling. After that, he used to stare him down deadly, right in the eye whenever he got a chance. So my ex goes back to the city, and it's now the 3rd week I've been alone, and the night is really hot. I open both windows wide open and put the curtains above them to defend myself from being peeked at. After all, I'm at a ground level and my bed is right below both of the windows. I wake up in the middle of night and I feel like someone's watching me. This happens the next few nights. I'm easily scared and paranoid, but I was alone there, so I've been telling myself to chill, and that's just my crazy mind trying to scare itself. Some nights went by without a problem. Meanwhile, Crumb tried to talk to me 2 to 3 times when I'm off to the beach. So it's around 1 AM, I'm falling asleep, and I hear footsteps outside the path. It's not strange, there are some people next to me staying at the same kind of apartment. Maybe someone's coming home or going out partying. But the steps stop at one point, really close outside. I hear all of it because of the open windows. I'm sitting in the bed now, listening, when I notice that the freaking door handle is moving slowly up and down. I kinda lost my shit, but stayed quiet. After that, nothing happened and the person just walked away. I closed the windows and called my dad and told him what just happened. He told me to lock and close everything and that he'll take me in the morning. It's a 5-hour drive. This was 3 years ago. Last night we're having dinner and my dad is like, "Do you remember your sea adventures?" He proceeds to tell me that he had made his own little investigation back in the day and asked the owners of the hotel for security camera records. They check the ones at the parking lot and see a male figure walking around. The part with the door handle wasn't in the camera's range though. My dad remembers my strange midnight waking up routine and tells them to check older records, in which they all see a man getting at my window and peeking through the curtains, standing like that for about 15 to 20 minutes. The woman finally recognized her brother and told my dad he has mental disabilities and begged him not to press any charges. She promised they'll take better care of him and look after him. So my dad, being the good guy that he is, did not press charges, and it appears we're selling that apartment. So anyone interested in buying? So I was around 7 at the time, and it was in summer 2011. I live in a pretty small village in France, where everyone knows each other and everyone trusts each other. My parents were working all afternoon, and before going to work, they would drop me and my little sister at our grandparents' house, which was a 20-minute walk from where I lived. Our cousin would also join us so we could play and watch movies. It was the summer vacation, and as usual, with my cousin and my sister, we took our bikes and went out to ride around where my grandparents were living. There was a field very near us where we would always go, and a large place just in front of it that served as a parking lot for those living nearby. So the place wasn't isolated. We had the order to get back at 8 PM from our grandma, because that's the time when our parents would come to fetch us. While we were at that place, I remember there was a woman playing with her son in front of her house, with a water gun and a red car parked in front of her house. I knew this car wasn't from someone around, because I know that village very well, but I thought nothing of it. There was a guy sitting in the car during all the time we were here with our bikes. and that was the only thing I thought was weird. So anyways, after we finished eating at around 7 p.m, we begged our grandma to let us go out riding the bikes again. After lots of hugs and negotiations, she accepted, but told us to be careful because it was getting dark, and to not follow or accept anything from a stranger. So we went out again, just my cousin, little sister, and me. I'm going to be honest here, but for some reason, I was so nervous that my stomach was hurting and I was almost crying. I didn't know why at the time, and thought I was afraid of vomiting because my stomach was hurting, so that's why I was nervous. Now that I'm older, I can only think that what I was feeling was actually anxiety. While my sister and cousin were talking and riding together, I was just sitting on my bike, trying not to cry and watching them. We stood there for a long time, and as usual, we didn't watch the hour. My grandma was used to us coming back late, though we would get scolded every time. Then the red car appeared again. Except this time, there were now 3 guys in it. They all had lots of muscles and seemed in their 30s. They stopped by my little sister and cousin, and being the older one, I quickly approached to see what they wanted. He told us, "Hey, I know where you live. We can ride you home." With the voice of an adult talking to a baby. I politely told him that no, we're fine, and that we're about to go back to our grandparents' house anyway. He became angry. He told us that he knew our grandparents and that he was here to bring us back to them. At that point I was thinking, why would he bring us back in his car while their house is literally like 5 minutes away? I asked him how could he bring us if we had bikes, and besides, there were only 2 seats free in the car. He became even more angry and told us to just get in the car, she'll go on my knees, showing my little sister who was very short. At that point, I don't really know. I'm both thinking that maybe it's true and he's getting impatient because we were already late, and he maybe had something else to do after bringing us back. And at the same time, I just had the word run in my head. So luckily, this ends well because it turns out we were very late and our grandma had sent my grandpa to go get us. When he arrived, he asked the guy what they were doing, and they just answered they were checking how we were doing and just left. I told my grandpa what had happened, and I can promise you, I've never seen him be so enraged before. He called them all the insults in the world and called the police right when he got home. That's when 7-year-old me understood what the hell had happened, and I was terrified of going out for so long. Now it's okay, but I'm still so anxious about being outside, even if I'm with someone. Sadly, I don't know what happened next. I don't know if those guys were ever found. I don't know if they tried to lure other kids. I don't know anything. Every summer with a few friends, we take a trip to the seaside of France for about a week. Last year, we decided to go to Hossegor on the southern western coast to go surfing, but ended up in a small tourist village, an hour from where we were supposed to go because of a reservation mess up. The week was going okay until the last 3 days of the trip, but the story I'm going to tell you is about the last night. So the past 2 days we had been in trouble with the police and a few other tourists because of some misunderstandings over a pack of cigarettes. We had spent the last 2 nights stressing and trying to cool things off. Therefore we thought the last night we spent there couldn't have been as bad as those 2, and it couldn't be possible as we were leaving the next day very early in the morning. So we had only planned to go to a restaurant for dinner with some friends we had met there to celebrate the trip. The dinner was going great, we were all having fun, and as time passed by, it started getting dark. Towards the end of the meal, my best friend Dennis, who was driving us home the next day, thought it was best for him to leave early and not drink too much so he could sleep as soon as possible and be in the best shape for the long drive that was coming. He left about 15 minutes before the rest of the group, while we stayed and drank a bit more. We paid the check, and as soon as I got up from my chair, I received a message from Dennis. "Call me, there's a guy following me." Here's what happened. Dennis had to pass through a caravan parking lot and a golf course to get back to the residence in which we had rented a house. While he was in the parking lot, he noticed someone behind him that was about his size, with a hood and a cap on. At first, he didn't think anything of him, as the village was actually quite touristic, and there were a lot of people usually passing by the parking lot. But when Dennis stopped to pee on a tree, he had a glimpse of the guy behind him, stopping and hiding behind another tree a few feet back. As soon as he got walking again, the guy stepped out from behind the tree and started following him again up the golf course. As Dennis got there, he was a bit creeped out, especially since at night the golf course is completely dark, only lit by the moonlight and empty of people. He stopped again for a second to light a cigarette and checked if the guy was still behind him. Once again, the guy stepped out of the path and hid behind a tree until Dennis started walking again. That's when he understood he was in danger. The guy wasn't physically imposing, and so Dennis thought it was weird he was so confident in following him, maybe because he was holding onto a knife or a gun. Nevertheless, Dennis kept walking and acting as if he hadn't noticed anything, although the guy was following him again and sent the message, "Call me, there's a guy following me." As soon as I picked up, he talked loudly to try and scare off the guy by saying, "Hey, you're at the golf course with the other 8? No problem, I'll be there in a minute." Even though we were 5 and absolutely not at the golf course, which was terrifying for me, but it was clever because it made me understand he wasn't joking and where he was. I assured him everything was going to be okay, that I would be there in 5 minutes, and told him to be careful and safely try to get home. As soon as I hung up, I started running towards the golf course and explained very briefly to my friend that Dennis was in trouble and we had to get to the golf course as soon as possible. Meanwhile, while I hung up, Dennis put the phone back into his pocket and kept walking. He took a glance back and saw the guy was still a few meters behind him. He took a last puff of the cigarette he had lit 2 minutes before, then threw it and started running towards the residence. As he was running, he took a look back and saw the guy started running too. It lasted for about 5 minutes before he got in front of our house, which was empty. When he got there, he stopped for a second, looked back one last time. The guy was about 10 meters behind him in the middle of an alley, and then went to hide behind one of the cars that were on the side of it. As soon as Dennis saw that, he panicked. He barged into the house, locked the door with difficulty, and grabbed the biggest knife he could in the house, and waited on the couch facing the entrance to the house, which was a glass canopy. When my friends and I got there, he was scared but unhurt. He explained everything to us, and then we went looking for the guy in a group of 4 people. The neighbors hadn't seen anyone other than us, and even though we got to the residence at first in separate groups at different times and through the 2 different entrances, we didn't see anyone coming out of them. He had completely disappeared. Nothing was stolen, even though we had left clothes to dry outside of the house, and nobody was hurt, so we didn't call the police, but warned the neighbors. Me and 2 others stayed up all night outside to look out for the guy, as he had seen where we lived, and we were afraid he would return during the night. Dennis had been lucky. We never knew what were the intentions of this guy, or if he was hiding something that gave him the advantage over my friend. Furthermore, he didn't even try to get into the house, and good for Dennis because there was another entrance to the house, another glass canopy that led to one of our friends' rooms, which had not been completely closed. We couldn't even understand what he did. If he wanted to steal from Dennis or hurt him, he could have done it 2 separate times when he went to pee and when he lit his cigarette. But he didn't, so what did he want? Who was he? Where did he go? I don't think we'll ever get any answers. We can only hope he never did anything to anyone and was arrested if he did. We didn't call the cops back then because we had trouble with them the past 2 days because of the problem with the pack of cigarettes I talked about before. Also, after those 3 days that had gone wrong, we just wanted it to end, go home, and sleep. I regret not calling them now that I think about it, but it's too late now, and I hope this guy hasn't been creeping on anybody since. We were all extremely tired the next day, and the drive that was supposed to be 5 or 6 hours long took 10 hours to complete under the heavy summer heat. But we all got home safely, slept well, Never had any problems of that sort since, and now we laugh about it. To conclude, I would advise you to never walk alone at night in places you don't know much about. There are crazy and weird people everywhere, and a calm night can quickly turn into a nightmare if you don't watch out.